which is all going to be about developing decision-making skills and the tasks and tools that we can use as teachers and as trainers in order to develop this essential communicative, interpersonal, and leadership skill. So, first thing I would like us to think about, and that is exactly what is decision making. So just take a few seconds, have a think about that in your own mind. Think about what's involved in decision making, types of decisions that you make, methods you use, and so on. And I'm defining decision making in a bit of an academic definition as anything where making a choice is involved. And the fundamental nature of decision making is that there must be various alternatives that we have to choose from, or there must at least appear to be various alternatives. Now, for a decision maker, numerous factors are going to influence the choice that a person makes. That will include the alternatives themselves, the options that the person has to choose from, the time frame that they have available. So, for example, with that, a decision that a person has to make in a crisis situation, which by definition has a very limited time frame, is going to be quite different to how they would make a decision if they had many weeks or months to research the issue, to consider the feasibility, to discuss the various outcomes, and so on. Other factors that might influence our decisions include the extent to which we consider the impact. What will happen as a result if we implement any particular action? Emotion, of course, is going to play a part in this, drawing on past experiences, the resources that we need in order to implement our decision, that is, time, budget, information, people, space, and so on. Both the resources that we need and the resources that are available. There may also be the influence of what can be referred to in a business context as different stakeholders. And by stakeholders, I mean not just people with a financial stake. So I'm not just talking about shareholders, investors, for example. We are talking broadly about anyone who influences what you do, anyone who is in turn influenced by what you are doing. And really, a good informal measure of what is a stakeholder is, can they actually reasonably complain about what you do? So this might include, of course, for a business, buyers, customers, suppliers, staff, local community, regulators, government, and so on. We also need to consider what can be referred to as other restraining forces, things that will fight back against a change or decision that you make, and driving forces, factors that will support you. Now, as decision makers, anybody who makes a decision is going to have various degrees of power and also of independence. And linking this again to a business context, this might relate to how much autonomy an individual staff member has, the extent to which they need to get permission from a manager in order to act, and so on. And decision making, one other point that's worth making in terms of our definition of decision making must always lead to some type of action. Though it might be a bit of an academic exercise where we are considering outcomes, decision making should lead to the formation of conclusions, recommendations, evaluations, and to these actually being acted upon in the real world. So if you are looking to develop the decision making competencies, that is, the knowledge, the skills, the mindset of our students or our course participants, it's worth starting off with some discussion questions in which they can talk in groups, they can share their ideas, share their experiences, and so on. Questions such as, what is decision making? What decisions do you have to make? How do you make decisions? What influences them? What challenges do you face? Any recent decisions you've made? And getting them, if they're comfortable to, share one successful and one unsuccessful decision they've made, plus their learning experiences from this. Now, we need to consider as well the different types of decisions. And there's one very neat model from an author called Susan Scott, who wrote a very famous book in business communication called Fierce Conversations. And I've based this on Scott's work there. So the first type is what are called leaf decisions. And these are decisions, and typically thought of in a business context, that a person can make, they can act on it, so they can actually do it, but there is no need to report to a manager. So this could be anything that's within the regular scope of somebody's work. It could be everyday responsibilities. It could be something mundane. Do they have tea or coffee when they get to the office? Going down the tree, the level of autonomy decreases. So branch decisions, these are ones where an individual can make the decision, they can act on it, but later they need to report to their manager. Now, most workplace decisions are actually going to be branch decisions, even at top level, even at C-suite level in an organization. Managers will still be reporting to somebody, whether it's a regulator, board, shareholders. There'll still be the need to report to somebody. The next one is trunk decisions. Trunk decisions are ones where you can make the decision, but you actually need to get the green light. You need the go ahead from a manager before you act. The classic example of this is getting permission, for example, to overspend, or even more so, making a decision about taking holiday time. You may have decided where you want to go and when, but you can't just disappear. And the final type is what are called route decisions. And these are decisions where, when it's needed, someone needs to go to their manager immediately. The manager will make the decision. Now, this is something where we can prepare our course participants for, because just because it's the manager who ultimately makes the decision, it does not mean that the person who is going to the manager is voiceless. They can still go there, make recommendations, they can put forward an argument, and so on, so they make sure that their voice is actually heard. So, very nice model to present to get some examples of this. Another great task that we can use, this one from Edward de Bono, the creator of lateral thinking, the more famous tool, the 6 thinking hats as well, is called the 6 value medals. Now, this starts off with asking our participants to consider a change they would like to make in their workplace, an action they would like to take, a decision to implement. And then we finish by getting them to decide, is it viable or not? Is it possible to actually do it? And each value medal is made of a different material, purely as a memory aid and something symbolic. The gold medal, what's the real provable impact on people? The silver medal, what's the impact on the organization? The steel medal, which is how will the decision being made affect the quality of what's being done? Glass medal, impact on creativity, innovation, simplicity, the avoidance of overt complexity and waste. Wood, linked to corporate social responsibility, what's the impact on the environment, on society? And finally, the bronze value medal, which is what will people's emotional reaction to the decision be? The gold medal, all about the real provable impact. The bronze medal asks you to speculate about people's reaction to the change, excitement, fear, and so on. Another great tool that can be used is decision trees, something that is often used in the workplace, great task for business English, might be used in EAP or ESAP, linked to planning, linked to case study analysis as well. So we ask our participants to firstly consider a problem or challenge. And this is something they can create on a flip chart, big bit of flip chart paper, or on a slide. We ask them to consider a problem or challenge. We then ask them to think of an option, a solution. How can that problem be solved? For each solution, we want them to consider what's the most positive outcome, the most negative outcome, and potentially the most likely outcome if they were to choose option A. Since we're talking about decision making, we also want option B. Maybe we've got option C, D, E, and so on. Great, even better. And again, we ask them to speculate about the outcomes. So you can see with this already, we've got various tenses that we need to use, great potential for exploiting vocabulary. We are asking them to work collaboratively, potentially as well. We're asking them to think critically, think creatively, think analytically. For each solution, each option, we also want to consider anything that will be an obstacle, a reality, something that would stop each solution being implemented. It's worth also asking them to consider the consequences of no action. So, great tool for this, practicing various skills, great potential for language, and also presentation as well there. Okay, if you've got a group that's quite high level, where there's a good level of autonomy and confidence, a simulation that works really nicely is a troubleshooting meeting simulation. And this involves, as you can see here, various steps to it. And what happens? Everybody in the group shares a problem. Each person takes it in turn to lead the meetings. One person presents their problem. Secondly, they take questions to clarify this. They will brainstorm, the group will brainstorm solutions together. So in terms of brainstorming, we are talking about quantity of ideas, remember, not quality of ideas. With brainstorming, we want as many ideas as we can possibly get. There'll then be the discussion, solutions, outcomes, obstacles, summary, a decision made, and handover to the next person. All the time this is going on, as the teacher, as the trainer, you can be monitoring what is happening there, preparing for feedback as well. So just to quickly summarize some quick ideas there. Well, we can talk about these competencies. We can use this in a business English setting, an EAP setting as well. We can use this in the ESAP setting when we are analyzing case studies. For EAP, it's great for considering alternatives, reports, essays, and so on. Interpersonal communication, decision-making as a soft skill. And also, it's developing language, leadership, competencies in change. So I've put some recommended reading there as well. And if you've got any follow-up questions, you can contact me there, ben@newwaypress.com. In this case today, I'm representing our startup publishing company and also the publisher of a new electronic magazine, the ELT Mag, that various people, including a few speakers and people from ELT Ireland, including Gary, have written for. And if you visit our website, you can subscribe to issue 2 of this absolutely free, which will be coming out in December. So thanks, everybody. If you have any questions, are we okay for time there, Gabby?
Yeah, we're okay for time, and we do have a few questions, Ben.
Excellent. Great.
Perfect. So the first question is, yes, teachers are the decision makers in the classroom, but feel they have no agency within their institutions. So how do you suggest encouraging or empowering them to be decision makers outside the classroom? Very good question.
Good. Yes, fantastic. So with this, what I always say, the setting, the context of that, I would say is largely irrelevant, because whether it's teachers or individuals, this is an issue that goes throughout various sectors, the extent to which people feel either empowered or limited in the autonomy that they have. Now, I always say with this, if you want to get people to listen to your decisions and your ideas, whether you are a teacher, whether you're in an office, whatever the context, particularly if we're dealing with something that's a problem or a challenge, if we go to somebody who is above us and we know there's going to be resistance, don't just say what the issue is or what is needed, because that can easily be dismissed as either a complaint or an observation. We need to think about, firstly, why we need to actually act on this decision. We also need to consider how this can be done, the benefits, and also the consequences if the decision is not taken. And if we think about this, if we are clear with this in our own minds, well, that makes us more confident. This empowers us as well. If we then go to somebody else who we know is a barrier, a gatekeeper, and that's the toll gate in order to get our decision acted upon, go to them, yes, with the issue, but also with your suggestion, with how this can be done, with the benefits of this, why this needs to be done, how it will work, the benefits, as I've said, and also what could happen if nothing is done as a result. And this way, you've done everything you can. You've supported them. You've gone along with an influential argument. If they choose not to listen or act on this, well, unfortunately, that does not mean it's our problem. It's their problem and the organization's problem, unfortunately.
Okay. Very insightful response. Thank you very much, Ben. We have another question, which is actually my own question. So when it comes to lower levels, is there any tips or suggestions on working with decision-making skills?
Yes, I would say with lower levels, we need to control the level of input that we can have with this. So rather than just throwing them immediately into something like a troubleshooting meeting, where lower level groups may not have the language to express the consequences, may struggle with the numerous tenses that are required with this, I'd say we can do something similar but shorter and more controlled with, for example, giving very small, clear case studies or examples of problems that different companies might face, for example. So rather than giving at an advanced level where we'd give people a 4 to 30 page case study that they need to analyze, give them a 1 or 2 line problem, something that's faced with a company, get them to think of their ideas. This way you can control the input and also their capabilities. You can also control which tenses, for example, are needed. You can do plenty of vocabulary input around the different problems as well. So we can start off with this in a business English context at lower levels and develop the language, do some input on this and the skills as well for decision making and leadership.
Fantastic. That's really helpful. Thank you for all the suggestions. Unfortunately, there is no time for questions, but there's a few questions on the chat box, so I invite you to read them. And